Okay, I want to welcome everybody. The time is 6:30. We're going to go ahead and open up public comment. And just want to talk about public comment. Views expressed by individuals during public comment do not necessarily reflect the views of the city of Fremont and have not been verified for accuracy by the city. As a reminder, city council and staff are not permitted to respond to comments or questions during the public comment period in accordance with the Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-103. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. I know we have a lot of folks that want to speak tonight and shall not contain topics included on this evening's agenda. So I have a list of folks that have signed to speak tonight. If you still would like to speak, there's additional sign-in sheet back there. Please sign that. We'll call your name. There's also comment cards as well that you can fill out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First, we have Gloria Yerger. Please state your name and address.
Gloria Yerger, 2318 East 5th Street, Fremont. Mayor and council, as a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, I want to join with others that are here tonight to object and oppose the continued placement of the book entitled Sex is a Funny Word in the Keene Memorial Library. This book has been characterized by some as a nonfiction comic book suitable for elementary and middle school kids on the topics of sex, sexual orientations, and gender identity. This is not an educational, biology, or anatomy book. This so-called comic book and the graphic depictions it contains are disgusting and far from age appropriate, in my opinion. Its content is borderline child pornography. If you look closely, the content of this book is intended to indoctrinate, not educate impressionable children. It's a book that has been challenged and deemed unsuitable for children elsewhere for its content and illustrations. When books such as this are found in our public library, one can understand why sexually inappropriate conduct is finding its way into our elementary and middle schools. Just read the daily news if you need evidence. This council approves the appointment of the library as well as those that serve on the library board that is responsible for the intellectual content and development of the library. This council also oversees and approves the rules and policies of our city's library. It also approves its budget as part of the city's budgeting process, and you allocate taxpayer funds for its operation. It's been reported that the library and the library board have the final say on the matters of this book remains available in the library. Regardless of policy statements that may lead one to that conclusion, city municipal code trumps such interpretation. The city's municipal code states that all actions of the library board shall be subject to the review and control of the city council. That puts the council in the proverbial hot seat should the library board render a decision that aligns with that. In closing, I admonish each of you to read this book yourself in preparation for the public's reaction to a library board decision and recommendation to retain this book. Keeping this book on the shelf will be a stain on our community, and for me, it would serve to indicate that those managing our library lack the discernment necessary to assess sexually explicit book content, which enables the stealing our children and grandchildren's innocence.
Sandra Murray.
Hello, City Council. Sandra Murray, 1745 North Nye Avenue. I spoke to you last month about some of the children's books in the library that are inappropriate. Since then, several books have been moved to the adult section, and I've requested that one book in particular, Sex is a Funny Word, be removed completely. That request has been formally denied. I've appealed that decision, so now it goes to the library board. I fully expect that the library board will again deny my request, at which point the issue will come before the city council, which has the final say. That is why I'm bringing it to you today. At the core of this issue is the protection of children. I am not intending to single anyone out or attack anyone. My fight is solely for the defense of our children, which is surely something on which we can all agree. I cannot ignore the fact that this book, Sex is a Funny Word, contains descriptions and vivid illustrations of sexual acts and body parts that are wholly inappropriate for children to view. For example, in one section, the book describes what masturbation is, how to do it, and shows illustrations of a child in a bathtub masturbating. Even the adults I've shown this book to find it very disturbing. I believe this book is part of a broader cultural trend to sexualize children, by which I mean that we are supposed to assume that even young children are interested in sex. This book is grooming children not to be shocked if a predator approaches them, talks to them, or heaven forbid, tries to touch them inappropriately. Children deserve to enjoy an innocent childhood. Anyone who has spent time observing children and how they play, interact, and think knows that left to themselves, such topics are generally the furthest things from their minds. They are still developing in their minds, bodies, and souls, and we as adults have the responsibility to protect them and to give them the space to develop and grow naturally without forcing them to think about things prematurely. Therefore, this book has no place in our library. In response to the accusation that I'm trying to ban or censor books, let's think for a minute about what that means. Historically, when a country or a regime seeks to ban or censor books, they attempt to get rid of every copy they can find so that people do not have any access to it. That is censorship and book banning, and that is not at all the case here. Anyone who wishes to read this book can still find it easily, for instance, on Amazon or eBay. City Council, please fulfill your responsibility to protect the citizens of Fremont, and in this case, our children. Thank you.
Amen. Ray Meister.
Ray Meister, 121 South William Avenue, Fremont. I begin tonight with a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German Lutheran pastor who was executed for speaking out against the Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler. Silence in the presence of evil is evil in itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. I'm here because someone who obviously has little knowledge of history referred to Sandra Murray as being a Nazi. The simple personal apology after the fact was insufficient. The word was intended and it was heard by multitudes of people, and that word follows her for the rest of her life. Now, don't even think about calling me a Nazi, folks, or a book burner, or a witch hunter, or a homophobe, racist, ignorant rabble rouser. I am none of those. Who am I? Well, I have a liberal arts degree in English, speech, journalism, focusing on those areas, and drama. I have 8 years of experience teaching English, British literature, American literature, and speech in the Fremont Senior High. I have a master's degree in library media from the University of Nebraska, 27 years as the library media director at Fremont Senior High, 24 of those years as the K-12 library media department head, and I am proud of that department. You may question me about our school selection standards later on. If I were to project pages 60 and 6 through 67 of this book on the screen, you would be somewhat stunned. The policeman here might even consider arresting me. And a considerable number of adults present might learn something about some sexual parts of your body that you didn't even know you had. And that's what's on those pages. The books in our library did not use cartoon children to innocently provoke us to believe something that we don't really want to believe. So I'm asking some questions about this situation for the mayor and the city council. Number one, does this library really merit the financial support of families and tax-paying citizens and other benefactors of this city? Now, I have looked at this issue and I have another question. Who is ultimately accountable for the utilization of the Keene Library budget of $1,022,565? And that was from 2020 because I cannot find any more current ones and I don't know why. Of which $1,016,032 came from the Fremont taxpayers and 67.4% is used for salaries, which kind of is a big chunk out of the budget compared to what we ought to be buying for materials.
We've been through the 3 minutes, sir. Just
Okay.
have to ask you to wrap it up, please.
I
Thank
will
you.
do, okay.
Okay.
Well, I have two more questions. I'll save them and give them to the newspaper. Thank you.
you.
This isn't going away.
Scott Preston.
I didn't bring mine.
I'm Scott Preston. I live at 1717 East 12th Street. And I come here tonight to discuss the book Sex is a Funny Word and its presence at the Keene Memorial Library. Before I start, I need to credit Gender and Our Children, a group based in the Los Angeles area. They're an organization made up of parents and teachers from both sides of the political aisle, many of whom are former supporters of the gender identity movement. And much of this information is pulled from one of their articles. They believe this book not only promotes the idea that children can consent to sexual activity, but also promotes the removal of children's sexual boundaries. Some would argue that this book is about sex education, but that would require providing factual and objective information. Instead, this book is written in a way to make the topic of sex as open-ended and playful as possible. Regarding the target audience, the publisher is clear that this is aimed at 8 to 10-year-old children. The book erases the concept of private parts, referring to them as middle parts. It normalizes children wanting to see the genitalia of other children and shows a child peering into a nudist colony. There are comparison drawings of kids' anuses versus adult anuses. There are drawings comparing kids' vaginas to adult vaginas. There are drawings of 3 erect penises. The section on erections includes a picture of a girl sitting at the bottom of a tree, pleasuring herself. The book says that girls and babies can get erections and likens getting erections to exercising. One page includes an adult asking a child, "What are some ways you like to be touched?" There's a 4-part graphic showing a girl in a bathtub having an orgasm. The young readers are asked if they have heard other people use the word masturbation or talk about touching themselves to feel good. And what's missing from that? The directive to the child that if they hear people talking about masturbating, especially an adult, they need to tell their parents immediately. And what does the book say on the same page? Do you know if there are rules in your family about touching yourself? And if there are rules, do they make sense to you? In other words, they question parental authority. Who would say and show these things to an 8-year-old child? I feel embarrassed standing up in front of the city council and describing these things, but these things must be called out. If we want this cultural rot to stop, we must push back. The alternative is to be on the side that approves of books like this that groom small children for sexual activity, and I refuse to participate in that. What about you? I realize this book has been moved to the adult section of the library, but the fact that it passed any sort of review process to be in the library at all shows a grave lack of judgment from the library director. It is my belief that this book needs to be removed from the Keene Memorial Library completely. I hope the library board steps in and does the right thing. If not, I would urge the council to take whatever action it can to remove Sex is a Funny Word from the shelves.
Eddie Ronhovny or Edie, sorry.
It's okay. Your first or last name always. Okay, well, my name is Edie Ronhovde. I live at 2120 Bramblewood Lane, and I read the rules and thought I was going to have 5 minutes, so you're going to have to excuse me while I paraphrase down to 3. But I have 32 years of experience working with children everywhere from birth to high school age, and I have a master's degree.
I want to address the sex is a silly word book first very quickly, because when I was young, we did not have places to go and get information that were accurate. We watched silly videos about flowers losing petals and then went home and were very confused as to how this all explained anything to us. So my friend and I asked our parents for some more information, and they went to the doctor's office and got books for us. And they also went to the public library and got books for us. These were very graphic books and showed exactly what our human parts look like. And for that, I was very happy that I knew. So when people talked about sex or where babies came from, I knew. And my parents had a choice to go get these at the public library. I have read every one of the books that's been talked about, and they seem to focus on one community, and that's the LGBTQ community. And that just breaks my heart. We have a lot of people in our community that fit into this category, and I don't know what kind of message you're sending to them if you start pulling these books that are letting children learn about other people and other families that don't look like theirs. How are we going to ever expect people to get along if we don't give them information? When you don't know things, you get afraid. And when you are afraid, we know what happens. Bad things happen. I want to address the last article that was in the paper last week that I read. Now, my heart was already hurting by all the other articles that have been in the paper lately. And the last one just about crushed me. It was about how donors in our community could possibly pull their funding from the library expansion. Wow. I have lived in this community for several decades, and I have watched wonderful people in our community give to various venues and events, both sporting and arts. However, what I have not seen is these same people standing in the doorways or at the entrance of these places and picking and choosing who could come in and who could not, and who could use the facility and who could not. I find it very hard to believe that these same generous, loving people would use their donation as blackmail to keep certain books out of our library. I may be naive about this, but my heart tells me that these wonderful people would not do that. And if so, my hope would be that the rest of the donors that don't pull their funds would be creative with the rest of us and come up with grants and et cetera, that we could make up the difference for these donations that had ugly strings attached. I think limiting people is awful. So in conclusion, I want to say that my grandparent choice to expose my grandchild to many things, but I will stick to this topic. I want my grandson to know his body parts. I want him to know why he feels the way he does. I want him to know where babies come from and use the correct terminology. And I want him to know the vocabulary used in the LGBTQ community. So when he hears these words being used, he will know if the person is using them correctly, kindly, or in a mean fashion. Most of all, I want him to be that friend that his friends can come out to and know that he will still be their friend and support them. I want my grandparent choice to do so.
Bev Goodwin.
Hi, I'm Bev Goodwin. My address is 1904 North Clarkson Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. It is human nature to be wary of ideas and people that are unfamiliar to us. Reading is a wonderful way to learn about people, places, and ideas in our community, in our state, our nation, and the world. The more we broaden our knowledge and that of our children, the better we are able to make good decisions and become better people, and to teach those skills to our children. Our library is a no-cost, convenient, and welcoming source of information for people of all ages in our community. Parents have the right to make decisions for their own family. It is offensive to me that anyone would believe that they are so intellectually or morally superior that they can make decisions for any other person or their family. I would not presume to know your areas of interest or beliefs, and you do not know my areas of interest or beliefs. I would not limit your access to information that you want or need, just as I would not want you to limit my access to information that I want or need. Removing books from our library limits everyone's access to information. No one person or group of people have the right to limit information for everyone else in our community. I support Laura England Briggs, and I have confidence in her ability to make the correct decisions for the library based not on her personal information or her personal views, but on her education and training and experience as a library director. Thank you.
Barb Bushy.
Barb Bushy, 2037 East First, Fremont, Nebraska. First of all, I will tell you, I have not seen nor read any of these books in question. From what I've heard and read, I think maybe a better location for these books would have been more appropriate. I do question, though, if Laura was ever approached about their disagreement of this book. I think maybe instead of causing the upheaval that has come about, could have been taken care of and at a easier way, in a manner. Although I do appreciate the fact that we all can come up and speak. Okay. I would like to say that some parents cannot or aren't able to speak to their children about sex. I think these books could be a learning experience. Adults, go check them out. Maybe that can help you. My grandson, soon to be 11, and the others 12 and a half. From the time they were very little, they know the appropriate names. Granted, they live in the country, so they have a different experience than some children do. But I'm proud to say that my grandsons do know and will continue. They'll ask me questions. They ask their mother, they ask their father. And I will say the father's a little embarrassed, but that's on him. My real reason tonight, though, or not the real reason, but I'm kind of offended. I will fight for anybody's right to have their opinion. And I too am entitled to mine. This seems to me, by banning books or banning a book, is trying to take my right away. It's trying to take my right away and some other people the chance to appropriately talk to their children about sex. Sex is not dirty. You can make it dirty by things you say. Would you rather be educated enough if your child comes and asks you, what is this part? A lot of what's been spoken about tonight, these children are going to learn this all on their own, or they're going to go and they're learning on the playground. And do you really want them to learn that out on the playground? I don't think so. There again, I do feel that it is banning a book is taking away the right of everyone to read and to see what they feel is appropriate. I'm not saying that's appropriate for everyone. I have not read the book, so I cannot address that one in particular. Thank you.
Barbara Christensen.
Or Christensen, 1776 North Nye, Mayor, Councilman. For the record, I am a library donor, and I do know what the library has to offer. This community is lucky to have this library. Our library is much more than books. It has a vast array of community services and to all groups, all socioeconomic groups. It offers this community. Our library director and her staff are very talented, and I think we should take care of them. I applaud Sandra for being aware and concerned about the book in question, and that it's easy accessibility to our very young children, grandchildren. It is appropriate. I am a little bit sad, however, at the way the newspaper has covered the resolution to this issue. It seems to me that recent articles have put much more in our community of the unnecessary graphic language out to everybody. If you want to read the article, you have to read the graphic language. And I think that's too bad. I think that more graphic language has been disseminated to our community in the last month of articles than the 3 years this book did out on the shelves of the library. I think every day we make decisions. And I think that we, in the grocery store, what meals we prepare, what TV we watch, it's learning to make good decisions. It's a lifelong project. And I think it starts early with parental input and parental guidance. And I think that the library can put books on the shelves, but I think it's up to us as parents to pick which books we take off the shelf. Thank you.
Larry Marvin.
Good evening. My name is Larry Marvin, and my address is 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124, Fremont. And I have a citizen's critique for reform. I'm not with them, but I agree with both sides there. With the recent beating and death of Tyree Nichols, America has witnessed the abuse by employees who are paid to protect us humans. That behavior was inhumane and certainly uncalled for, and swift action is still taking place against those who were paid to serve and protect, but failed to perform, in my opinion. You have started to review have you started to review our policies, procedures, and contracts? And if not, why not? I am a certified teacher of civics, history, and the German language, and more. We teachers do not criticize. We give constructive criticizing and critiquing and re-educating. When our students do not understand, we redo it again correctly, and we give tests, pre-tests, and after tests and stuff. After about 2.5 years ago, a young girl here in Fremont allegedly claimed about sexual abuse by her stepfather, who was on the payroll as one of our policemen. What did you do about it? What did the county do about it? Allegedly, our Nebraska troopers prosecuted our policeman, and our policeman allegedly was sent to the penitentiary. Then last year, Douglas County allegedly prosecuted our former policeman, who allegedly was doing the same sexual behavior abuse in Douglas County, allegedly before we hired him. Who hired him? Okay, you did, didn't you? About 4.5 years ago, I called you requesting help when I feared for my life, and you refused to help me. Well, I did not die of hypothermia, so I came over here and told you that you were fired. And you might think it's funny, but I told you that if you should be embarrassed so bad that you never come back, and then you would be out on your own rules because of failure to show up. Have you covered up any deaths before or after you refused to help me? Well, we can gain from this Memphis tragedy. In America, our Republic Constitution requires the separation of judge, jury, and executioner. All our police and rescue need to understand this required separation of power. And all of you need to understand this. You did take an oath to obey our Constitution. Thank you, and I have a copy for each of you, and I have 11 copies, so the council and the mayor and secretary can have them.
Richard Register.
I'm Richard Register, 509 West Military, Fremont, Nebraska, former president of the Friends of the Library. I'm here in support of the library and the institution it represents. The library is the foundation of knowledge and continued education for us as adults. And contrary to one of the earlier speakers, not everybody has the resources to buy and replace books. We've heard from some of the parents. I'm a great grandparent at the present time of a 6-year-old child, attends our public schools here in town. I want the resources for that child's father, my grandson, to be able to have these difficult conversations. But we're jumping the gun. Procedurally, where are we at this? Should we be listening to an hour of talking about this particular book when we have a proper procedure? We have a trained, educated, and very well thought of library director who's following the procedures. Yeah, it may eventually get to you, but how many times do we have to hear it? Let's go through the proper procedure. Let's support our libraries and give our parents the tools they need.
Emily Nelson.
Hello, I'm Emily Nelson, 717 North Clarkson. I actually brought the book because I have the ability to buy books on Amazon. But that wasn't always the case. So I didn't prepare anything really. I'm just going to tell you my story. I grew up with a broken household. My parents divorced, and I was very introverted. I'm not sure if you can see right now, but I am actually quaking. And when I was going through the changes, there was no way on heaven or earth I was going to talk to my mother about it at all. And I remember my sex talk was her sliding library books under my door. And yes, they had graphic pictures, but it's what I needed. The job of a parent is to prepare our children to live in a world where we are not there to protect them. And as much as I hated it, she made sure that I knew every word, every name that she knew at the time, because she didn't want me to go out into the world and agree to something I didn't understand. And so I actually have this book, and I wanted to talk about how it even talks about things like secret touches. It has a whole section actually about secret touches and why we need to tell someone, because touches should not be secret. It talks about the middle parts, because the term private parts is able to describe the part of body that we have sex, but because any part of your body can be private, this book is going to call them middle parts. It's not taking away the privacy. It's actually making it to where you can have more privacy if you want. And as a middle school teacher as well, this is an important thing that I think our kids really need. And as, you know, a child of a single parent who didn't have Amazon money all the time, this is something that should be made out there, made accessible to the people that need it. And that's what the public library is. Thank you.
Brian Villock.
Hello, Brian Villock, 2125 North Broad. Really had no intention of speaking today. But I think the more I thought about this, and believe me, don't want to fight the woke mob, just going to give an opinion. So, and I understand it seems a little graphic. I was trying to explain to my 76-year-old mother, and it got embarrassing, the book for 7-year-olds a little bit. So, but more importantly than that, I'm not here to fight about the book, but what I do want to fight about or bring up is I visited the library over my lunch hour, and it looks nice in the auditorium. And I was surprised in our Fremont library that we're all paying for, that there's not a Bible in there. I know it's a lot to ask for some people, maybe the librarian. I know they've all got a bunch of masters and very smart, but I don't think it'd be too much to ask for a Bible to be in the library. So I thought, well, I went home and got my King James, and what we're going through and everything. I thought, well, what would the Bible have to say? So I brought along, and this would be, again, King James, Mark 9:42. And I'll just read this little bit for you. And whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were cast into the sea. Now, people can have different opinions, and those are the words of Jesus. But I think it's important. It kind of puts it in perspective, with 7-year-olds. And, but again, I'm not here to fight about the book, but I just wonder, is it too much to ask to get a Bible in the library? We're spending $1 million+ and it just seems like that would be pretty easy thing to have, at least give someone a choice. So that's why I'm here. I was just surprised. I mean, I'm not, the whole book fighting and the mob, and I don't want any part of it, but I do think I'm just here. My kids are raised, thank God, but I'm here just wondering if the library director would find it too hard to just put a Bible in the library. Someone may be interested in that. Thank you.
Harry Mendoza.
Hi, I'm Carrie Mendoza. My address is in Fremont, 1735 North Platte. I'm born and raised, always lived in Fremont. I have a few comments and thoughts. So the book that we're discussing about the sex is a funny word. Well, we have to think about other cultures and how we're raised. Everyone is raised just a little differently. But if we could take a picture in a little outside of maybe how each one of us has grown up, if we come from a family that has not talked about any part of our body parts, if the child has asked a question, what do I call this? Or if they have asexual feeling, what do I call this, mom or dad or grandparent? Maybe there's not a mom or dad, or maybe auntie or uncle. And they themselves have never had the experience of how to address this. Then how do we go forward with this child? So in many times when a child comes from another country, this has happened. They don't know how to address it. So in multiculturalism, we want to learn how to address this. And I believe this book can assist, because many times the child, whoever they're being raised by, may not have had the experience in life and how to address this. I do not have an educational degree. I'm a business major, but I have spent 30 years in our community helping our children and adults of all walks of nature, languages, culture. So there's one area very still to my heart where we have a child, a family that has had sexual abuse. And I've experienced this many times as being a volunteer and helped with our bridge, where a child, maybe they don't know that they have been sexually assaulted, and they say, well, whoever, they've touched me here. Oh, then you get the authorities and you get the reports going. They may not have known that touching what we have always referred to as private parts is something that should not be done. I believe this book and the sections that have been already addressed this evening can address this issue. and bring that to light. And hopefully, if there has been a type of sexual misconduct towards a child, this child can recognize it and we can put a stop to sexual predatism for children. And then, in addition, it's been mentioned tonight, a child needs to live safe. Well, that brings back to that same comment, to that same topic. I've always taught in my women's group, I taught many years ago with the bridge, to fight fear is to know knowledge. So yes, I have an 18-year-old, I have a 3-year-old. And with every aspect of my being, I would approve going into the library, supporting Miss Laura's decision of having this book, because I've put faith in her and her crew, directors, so forth, that what book they feel that should be on the shelves is my direction then, if I want to read it to my kiddos or to another kiddo.
I'll have to ask you to wrap it up.
Thank you. So the other book then that has come to light is All Are Welcome. I do believe that is a good book also in our public schools, as we have multiculturalism, disabilities, and multi-religions in one household. So thank you for listening to me tonight.
Kathy Robertson.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Robertson, 1896 Luther Lane. I hope to bring maybe a different perspective than what you've heard thus far. I think everybody's taking a side, yay or nay here. I went online and listened to a book review of this particular book. Let's talk about this book in particular. And what the author states is that it is intended for the parent to read it first. It is a teaching aid for parents when they feel it appropriate for their children. The parent should read it first. It was not intended to be a book in the children's section that the child could go and pick out to read to themselves. That comes from the author of the book. So again, I'm not going to pick sides here, but I think it's very important to look at this book in particular and what that author intended its use be. Thank you.
Bert Murray.
Yes, sir. Well, hello, my name is Bert Murray, 1745 North Nye, Sandra's husband, here supporting her. I would like to say that I didn't really prepare a statement or anything, but I would like to say, listening to both sides of the story, that I feel like parents have a right to decide what their children are exposed to. And we have a very big void here between these groups. And I don't know what, I guess all we could say is we're just going to have to say some things are not allowed, because one side's going to say it can't be there and the other side's going to say it's okay. Well, I guess they'll also have to go look at somewhere else. I don't know what to tell you, but one of the things I wanted to tell you, I love to tell stories. So I might bore you a little bit with this, but so anyway, we were down in Florida, and there was a little heart in the canal, and my granddaughter, who's 7, came to me and goes, "Papa, we have to go down there and get that heart out of that canal." I was like, I'm up in the house. I was like, I really, of course, she's only 7 and she's very sincere. She goes, "That little heart belonged to Mimi's dog, and Mimi's gone. And it was her collar. It was her little dog tag." I was like, wow, her imagination is great. It was in like 2 or 3 feet of water. So I get a fishing net and I go down there and I fish around and I get it out and I pull it up on the fishing net. And it's a little tinfoil heart. And I take it like this and I hand it to her. It wasn't what she thought it was, but it was a little tinfoil heart. And she goes, "What should I do with it?" And I go, "Well, go put it in the house." And that's how innocent a 7-year-old is. They have a little tinfoil heart And we want to expose them to things that they have no business being exposed to. It's just the way it is. I don't know which world you guys were born and raised in, but I'm a product of the 70s. I'm like the person that used to watch little sitcoms like The Flying Nun. I know, but I want to talk to them too, because most of the people that are against this are over on that side, I think, but I just want to talk to everybody. I'm sorry. But I come from a very innocent age where we didn't push all these things on kids. So anyway, I always kind of feel like maybe a picture's better. So can I approach you guys? Oh, no, okay. Well, anyway, this is a picture of a 7-year-old with a tinfoil heart. That is sincere. Sincere. Who would want to mess with that? Okay, if anybody messes with this 7-year-old with a tinfoil heart, the Papa Bear and Mama Bears are going to come out. Now, you guys all might think, well, that library person, they're educated, blah, blah, blah. The educators have an agenda. Wake up. Boom. Yeah. Number two.
The 3 minutes is up.
Okay. I have just
I'll
one
have to ask you to wrap it up. So.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. Desmond Doss, conscientious objector, Medal of Honor winner. Every time he would save somebody, he'd say, Lord, please help me save one more. That's what this is. We're trying to save one. This is onesies. We're all trying to save one. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else here wanting to speak? Okay. Please sign in over there if you still want to speak and you are here.
Can you sign in again?
When they're done, thank you. No. Go ahead.
Last one was a tall one. Diane Pasica, 108 South Garden City Road. I'm going to keep this brief. I really don't feel that we need to be on opposite sides of this issue. I think that I have learned a lot tonight from both sides. I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old grandson living in, or grandchild living in town, and I am concerned about what they see. However, I am able to feel that their parents are in control of the situation and will help them through this process with or without the use of a book that we're talking about tonight. I also want to talk, I don't want to talk about, whose grandchildren are the most sincere, but I think we all love our grandkids. I think we all love children in our lives. And I hope that this kind of situation can maybe be looked at a little bit differently. When I have not read the books, but I have read the articles. And one thing that distressed me was, for the way it sounded, was that this book was put out in a display that is in a very publicly accessible point. If that's the case and anybody could pick up that book, I was a little bit concerned that the librarian or someone on her staff had not come back and reported to the librarian director exactly what was in this book. This is maybe, I know she can't read everything, but this is maybe one book that maybe should have been looked at a little bit closer because it does have a very sensitive nature. It's not for everyone. And so I hope that maybe that's something that can be considered in the future so that there's not this type of conflict. I don't like conflict as a general rule. I like an argument once in a while, but to put an us against them situation, that breaks my heart. We're Fremont. And we need to work together to make the best Fremont we possibly can, to have the best library we possibly can, to have the best opportunities for our children as we possibly can. So let's quit talking about us and them and talk about we and how we are going to look at this situation now and in the future. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Brock Babcock. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. And I'm talking about the library book and, oh, my bad. My name is Brock Babcock, 717 North Clarkson. And I'm talking this more of someone who learned this information a lot younger than what this book was targeted towards. I grew up in a household with a mother that has now 35 years of experience teaching all levels of biology, anatomy, physiology. So I grew up very young learning about this stuff. So I have that benefit. And now reading through this book myself and looking through it, this is a tool for kids and families that didn't have the benefit I did. It's a great teaching tool for them. As someone brought up earlier, it's supposed to be a teaching aid, not for just a kid to look up and just cut through. Because a kid at that age, by themselves, they probably won't have the knowledge to comprehend everything there. So it needs to be used in tandem with the parents as the book is intended. So like I said, it being removed from the library is a terrible thing to do because it eliminates that teaching tool that's needed for these families. Thank you very much.
Don Bowen.
Don Bowen, 107 East Linden, Fremont. Libraries are very dear to my heart. Was my very first job when I was in high school. So seeing any library attacked breaks my heart. Libraries are public, owned by the people of this city. It is like the lady spoke before me, this is a we topic, not an us versus them. People who want to be involved in decisions on this need to actually become involved in doing more than coming before the city council. They need to become involved in the library board. The library has a board. If people want to be involved, get on the library board. Be involved in more than just coming before the city council and complaining. If they want to be involved in things, do something about it. Get involved. Don't just get up here and complain. Put your money, put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. This is a very important topic. This is a very important issue, but we have a library that we should all be very proud of. This is comparable to libraries for cities that are bigger than we are. And people come here and are very proud of, brag about our library. And they should. And what we're going to end up with is going to be head over shoulders above what other cities are going to be bragging about. So if you want to, you want to get involved. Don't just gripe. Thank you.
Okay, time is 7:23. That's going to conclude our public comment. We will take we'll reconvene at 7:30 to begin our meeting.
Good luck. And expand another book.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Travis, I can't bring the agenda up. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, good. Thanks for all your help. We appreciate that. We're gonna. We can't, yeah.
Okay, before we begin, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and open up the regular city council meeting. The time is 7:32. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. So this time we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. Let me try again here. Okay. There we go. Seven council members are present, Mayor.
Okay, next is mayor's comments. I'd like to recognize the January 2023 service awards. First is Darren Ishmael, 10 years of service. Darren started with the city of Fremont as a gas system worker, a welder in 2013. In 2017, Darren was promoted to a gas service worker. And then Darren then became a gas leak surveyor in 2021. Dylan Hansen, 5 years of service. Dylan started with the city of Fremont as a line worker apprentice in 2018. In 2022, Dylan was promoted to line worker first class. Kent Deming, 5 years of service. Kent started with the city of Fremont as a line worker apprentice in 2018. He was promoted later in 2018 to a line worker first class. Kent was promoted to senior engineering associate in 2022. And then Dylan Rieken, 5 years of service. Dylan started with the city of Fremont as an instrument and control technician in 2018. So again, I want to thank Darren Ishmael, 10 years of service, Dylan Hansen, 5 years of service, Kent Deming, 5 years of service, and Dylan Rieken, 5 years of service for the city of Fremont. Okay, that concludes my comments. We'll move on to item 1 on the agenda is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the January 31st, 2023 regular meeting. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to adopt the current agenda.
Councilman Ellis.
I wanted to make a comment that I noticed the agenda has changed quite a bit. We have a new section called appointments. They've been taken out of the the regular agenda and the consent agenda. And I noticed that we're not going to have the opportunity for public discussion on these. So I would encourage the mayor to make sure each one of them has a public comment, and in the entity of transparency. I think that's the best that we can do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 2 is appointments, moving into appointments, and Councilman Ellis is right. We did want to make an appointment section. We have firefighters, police officers, other appointments, those folks that bring their families here to the council chambers, and thought that it'd be best to begin with those, just to again, recognize those folks for their willingness to serve and have that when their families are here. So yes, we did do that. So item 2 on the agenda under appointments is a move to consent to the mayor's appointment of Tad Dinkins to represent Ward 1 of the city of Fremont for a term expiring December 2024. It is my honor tonight to bring forward Tad Dinkins to serve as our Ward 1 council member. We from the retirement of Councilman Gibson, again, went through a process where I accepted accepted letter of intent and resumes to the city by January 25th. And so, as you can see in the packet, there were two letters of intent submitted. And so I interviewed both candidates. And we were lucky to be able to have 2 really good candidates being willing to step up and serve as our Ward 1 representative. And so, again, my honor tonight to present Tad Dinkins. As you can see from the letter, Tad is been really involved heavily in the city. He served on the board of directors of the Fremont Area Chamber of Commerce. He served the Fremont Area United Way Board. He's also on the Board of Education at Archbishop Bergen. He served on the city's Utility and Infrastructure Board since 2021. And so he's married, has 3 daughters, and cares deeply about Fremont. And so, again, I'm excited to be able to bring forward Tad Dinkins into that spot tonight. Take any discussion from council or questions. Councilman Von Baron.
Just a point of information. I tried to go through this and I found out my legal ability is quite limited. So, but just a point, one of the things that I've appreciated, and I'm the newbie in this group, but after 15 hours of orientation, I struggled to wade through. Obviously, I get through these, but I know my limitations, even after spending a lot of time with city staff and all. I have absolutely no problem with this appointment. I think it's a very good one. But I'm questioning the wisdom of seating a councilman right and expecting them to vote once immediately after they've been appointed. I think we do have a precedent in the past for waiting a month. Again, I have absolutely no opposition to Tad or anything going on here. But what I'm suggesting is that we start to set a precedent where councilmen are appointed and then they can be seated after they've had the opportunity to go through an orientation and at least get some familiarity with the basics of the job.
Yeah, I would just say that, we've had obviously a resignation on the city council, and there's a process that I have followed to appoint someone, and the constituents in Ward 1 deserve to be represented. And so I would just say that, Tad had ample opportunity to go over the agenda ahead of time and ask any questions that he may have had in regards to the agenda to get caught up. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'm
would like to thank him for his willingness to serve, and I'll make the motion to send to your approval.
Councilwoman Ganem,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0, Mayor.
Okay. Tad, you want to go ahead and come up, take your seat, and we'll do the oath of office for our new council member. Repeat after me. I state your name. I, Tad Higgins. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely and without any mental reservation, purpose of evasion. That I will bear the faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or for the purpose of evasion. And I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of interim council member according to law and to the best of my ability. And I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of interim council member according to the law and the best of my ability. And I do further swear that I do not advocate nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence. I do further swear that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of the state by force or violence. And that during such time as I am in this position, I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence, so help me God. And that during such time as in this position, I will not advocate or become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence. So help me God. Let's welcome our new council member. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3 is a move to consent to the mayor's reappointment of Scott Brown to the Building Code Advisory and Appeals Board to a 5-year term. This is a reappointment of Scott Brown to the Building Code Advisory and Appeals Board. I would take any questions from the council or from the council. If there are no questions, I'd take a motion to approve the appointment. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 4 is a move to consent to the mayor's reappointments of Chuck Johansson and Michelle Weesey to the Citizens Advisory Review Committee of the city for 2-year terms. I'd take any questions from council on this item. If there are none, I'd take a motion to approve the appointments. Councilwoman Ganem.
I move we appoint Chuck Johansson and Michelle Weesey to the Citizens Advisory Review Committee.
Councilman Vaughn.
That was second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 5 is a move to consent to the mayor's appointment of Lori Lathrop to the local option review team for a 2-year term. Take any questions from council. If there are none, I'd take a motion to approve. Councilman Von Baron.
So moved.
Councilman Sukram.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0 with 1 abstention, Mayor.
Item 6 is move to consent to the mayor's appointment of Stan Darling to the Planning Commission to fill an unexpired term ending April 2025. take any questions from council on this item. Councilman Vaughn.
I didn't have any questions. I was going to make the motion.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, it's a question, and I think this is obviously a very good appointment. Stan's been active and done a lot of things in the community, but I know that I think the first time this came up, it was a conflict with the housing administration. And I didn't know, I'm a little bit unclear on that, whether we can hold two offices at one time. It's just a question I'd like to clarify.
Yeah, I can clarify that. Travis Jacott, city attorney. The housing agency, I believe he's a commissioner on the housing agency. And you can serve in those two boards at the same time. And actually, under the housing agency, under statute, he could serve on the council if that was needed. But that's a whole statutory process to get him on there. But it is okay for him to serve on both those boards. There's no conflict there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Vaughn. Okay. Councilman Von Baron.
Sec.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 7, public hearings. Ordinance 5637, Charles Deers LLC request for a change of zone from R rural to AR auto urban residential on property generally located at the southeast corner of Luther Road and East 23rd Street, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. At this time, we'll have staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request for change of zone, as was mentioned, from rural to AR, auto urban residential. It is associated with the annexation that is next on the agenda, as well as a preliminary plat, final plat, and subdivision agreement. Those items will be on your next meeting agenda. The change of zone and annexation all require 3 readings. The plats and the subdivision agreement are just 1 reading. There were still a couple of items on the subdivision agreement, so we decided to hold those items on the next agenda instead of putting them on this particular agenda. So you would have a complete package at that particular point in time. The area with the change of zone that is being proposed for auto urban residential are what is essentially 2 lots that will be used for an elementary school. Auto urban residential zoning is appropriate for that area. The remainder is remaining rural residential or rural at this point in time. It's anticipated in the future that the area on the north side of Elk Lane and Elkhorn Drive will become commercial, and then the area to the west of the schools will become residential at some point in the future. But for now, we're just requesting a change of zone for the 2 pieces of property that will be acquired by the schools. The annexation, which is the next item on the agenda, however, will be for the entire area. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this point in time.
Councilman Ellis.
Jennifer, the lower right hand or lower left hand quadrant is rural. It's going to remain rural right now. Will they have to come back and get that changed when they want to do residential?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If they want to change any of the other items, any of the other outlots is what they will be. They have to come back for the change of zone, and they will also have to come back and plat those areas in a.
Is there any reason why it wasn't done now if they know they're going to do it in the future?
I think that they just weren't prepared at this point in time, since they're not final platting those particular lots. They have to come back. They can't do anything with that property at this point in time. So
thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. I'll now open the public hearing. Ordinance 5637.
Kyle Haase with E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska, representing the applicant. Along with myself, Maggie Yost, representing the Deers family, is in the audience, and Mark Shepard and Brad Dahl with Fremont Public Schools are here. as well. As Jennifer mentioned, we're looking to, she gave a good overview of the project as a whole. Of those 40.1 acres that we are looking to plat and rezone, 24.9 of those acres will keep its current R zoning, as she mentioned, and 11.4 acres total will be dedicated to the school and their new building. The rest, the 3 acres, is what's going into public right away. We're hoping that this platting will also spur and help get the property ready for both future commercial and residential development. We have worked closely with the city of Fremont and the public schools for over a year now. And we think we have come to a plan that's beaten the goals of both the school and the city and the Deers family as a whole. So with that, I'll make myself available for any questions, not only for item 7, but item 8 as it's brought up as well. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments from council. Councilman Jensen.
If there's no additional comments, I'll make the motion to hold first reading on ordinance 5637.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at the south side of Deer Crossing and Elkhorn Drive from R rural to AR auto urban residential, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability and providing an effective date on first reading.
Okay, item 8 is ordinance 5638, Charles Deers LLC request to annex property generally located at the Elkhorn Drive and Deer Crossing in Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. Go ahead.
Jennifer Dam, Planning Director, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is the request to annex the area. We are actually annexing the entire area of the development, current and as well as the outlots. This will help minimize any what you might call donut holes in the community and help move forward development in the future for areas that will be served with infrastructure. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Okay. Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing this item.
Red Yerger, 2318 East 5th Street. I just have one question with regards to the annexation. It's my understanding that once the city annexes this, we're going to be responsible for certain types of infrastructure within those boundaries. For example, street intersections. The way this is drawn out, it looks like there will be an intersection that runs out to Luther and goes off to the north as well. So that will become city responsibility. So my question really is this. We'll have that expense and there'll be multiple portions of rural left in this area that's annexed. My question to council, if you understand, or if the applicant could explain, where are the access points for farming in these areas that are being left unrezoned and annexed at this time? Thanks.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. Additional comments from council. Oh, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, sir. Additional comments from council? Okay, if there are none, I would take a motion to hold first reading. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located at the southeast corner of East 23rd Street and Luther Road, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on first reading.
Item 9 is resolution 2023-009 of Christopher Gold and H Rentals LLC to approve a conditional use permit for an auto sales establishment generally located at 3303 North Broad Street in Fremont, Nebraska. And I have staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This request is for a conditional use permit for auto sales. Auto sales in the light industrial district do require that conditional use permit. This particular site is a very long building with multiple bays. This is at the southernmost bay, and it will be only that southernmost bay that's used for auto sales. All of the auto sales will take place inside of the building. The vehicles that will be sold are going to be higher end vehicles and I think more specialty or antique type vehicles. They'll all be kept inside. There was a request for a waiver of the landscaping that was approved by the Planning Commission. If you look at the particular site plan or the aerial photograph, you'll see that there's really no place to put landscaping. And the Planning Commission felt that since the autos are typically what are screened and they'll all be inside, that they already are being screened by the building itself. And that the landscaping to screen just that south part of the building really wouldn't benefit the area at all. Staff is recommending approval to the conditional use permit, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Councilman Sukram.
Was this already an indoor auto place once before?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
If it had been, it's been more than 12 months, so it would lose its status as a non-conforming grandfathered use.
Councilman Ellis.
I'm not against this at all. I think it's probably a great location for an auto dealership or whatever, but my understanding is waivers need council approval. Is that not true?
The UDC specifically allows the Planning Commission to grant waivers of the landscape.
Of landscape? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Councilwoman Ganem.
No question, but I need to abstain since my son owns the property.
Okay, I'll now open the public hearing, resolution 2023-009.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. A comment was made about the waiver and conditional use and eliminating or forgiving part of the landscaping. I look at section 303.01 about waivers upon recommendation of the Planning Commission to be presented to the council. However, I don't see the language about what the waiver actually forgave. Are you comfortable with what they're either eliminating or reducing? I didn't see, and you may have a different copy. You may have been given different information. I would just, and also in comment made prior, I'm not against this use of the building. I think it's a benefit for the people that want to do it, but it'll clean that area up a little bit. It does abut a golf course. There's already foliage there, bushes, trees, etc., along that shared boundary area. I just want to know what that waiver was about. I didn't see it defined in the paperwork that was in your most recent copy of the agenda online on the backup, and that wasn't defined tonight yet. I'd like to know what that was. Thank you.
Any additional comments from the public?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth. I'll just comment briefly on what was just said with regards to the resolution 2023-009, because I agree with what was just said. And it seems to me that the whereas statements in the resolution need to at least acknowledge the waivers that were granted. The resolution states that it's in full compliance with 54 or 11504.03 of the developmental code. If in fact you're making any distinction differences for landscape or any other reasons, then they at least should be called out in the resolution. This would seem to imply there are no restrictions other than they have to get a permit for a dealer's license. And that's the only restriction. If in fact the planning commission looked at other things and there were things to be acknowledged, they should be acknowledged in this resolution. Thank you.
Additional comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Comments from council on this? Okay, if there are none, I take a motion. Councilman Vaughn.
Motion to approve.
Councilman Jensen.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-0 with one abstention, Mayor.
Item 10 is resolution 2023-010 of Ronald Sawyer and Tim Ogborn, request for a conditional use permit to allow auto sales in a light industrial district on property generally located at 346 South Broad Street in Fremont, Nebraska.
Good
ahead.
evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. Similar to the last request, this is a request for auto sales in a light industrial district. The difference from the other proposal is that these auto sales will be outdoors. The applicant did request a waiver of landscaping in this area. The planning commission granted a reduction in the required amount of landscaping that's required. As you look through your packet, you can see the diagrams that show the areas that were required to have landscaping. Typically in this area, because Broad Street is an arterial street, a type C buffer yard would be required. The planning commission reduced that amount of landscaping and allowed the landscape plan that's in your packet as shown. There is a 10-foot buffer along Broad Street, and I think it's a 5-foot buffer along West Jackson Street. The plantings are as shown in your packet with a number of shrubs and trees, primarily shrubs along the streets. It's Carl Forester grass and boxwood. And then there are a couple ivory silk lilac trees and weeping white spruce trees that will be provided up at the northern end. And a couple of trees that are also provided on the south end. Broad Street in this particular area has a very wide right of way and the viaduct is just going up. So there is a buffer of green space that is provided in that area. They are removing some of the concrete to add additional landscaping to soften the area. And the planning commission thought that that was satisfactory. Staff concurs and we recommend approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilman Jensen.
So Mr. Sawyer and Mr. Ogborn are all right with the modified version of the landscaping?
Yes, they submitted the revised landscape plan and are willing to install the landscaping. I believe they may be here tonight.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. I will open the public hearing of resolution 2023-010. Comments from the public. Okay, hand them to legal and we'll get them over here. Thank you. Okay, I'd take a motion to receive the documents. Councilman Jensen.
Motion to receive.
Councilman Sukram. Okay. You cast your votes to receive the documents.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay. What I gave you was a copy of the plan the planning commission had in the beginning when they had their meeting. And then, of course, I attached the plan that you just looked at. The planning commission meeting is where they said the different type of buffers. And they approved it as, and I assumed what they meant to approve. I mean, he didn't have a plan there other than first one that's on there where they were just showing maybe a couple trees. And they went ahead and approved it with what they talked about. But what staff had suggested was it would require 4 trees along Broad Street with 16 shrubs and a type A on Jackson Street with 2 trees and 5 shrubs. I have no problem with this landscaping. It's a problem. What I have a problem with is some of the process that goes on. I've read the municipal code, and I see where it says the council has the right for waivers after recommendations. I can't find specifically where it says the planning commission can do away with landscaping waivers without coming back to the council. So I need to get educated, I guess, on that. But the plan doesn't have 4 trees, which is what I assumed that when they approved it, they were looking for 4 trees. And I'm not saying they can't go, but I can't see as how the planning commission could have approved this particular drawing because this was after the fact of their meeting, which I think is a problem. Also, it says down there that it meets all the requirements. I've been down there. It is not on a collector street. I went to the state, I called the city and they told me to go to the state. And that's what the map is. And this is the one they said they use. And this is the one person I talked in the city said that they would go by. And it clearly states that Jackson is not a collector street. Washington is, but that's a block farther south. So it doesn't meet that requirement. I have no problem if you really do that, but I think it needs to be in the record that you're allowing them not to be on a collector street. And also I was in there and from what I could tell, the lot doesn't look to be concrete or asphalt. It looks to be, I don't know, some kind of gravel or something. It's pretty hard to tell with them being frozen, but there was a lot of rock under some of the stuff there that was really loose. So I would question that, but it's definitely not on a collector street. So you just need to make yourself aware, just because the planning commission recommends it, it needs to be checked out as far as what's going on for sure. And I have no problem with it being used that way. It's just that some of the things need to be put more in your perspective and more information to you as to what it is. They're just saying it's on a collector street. It meets that. It does not, according to the state. The city said that's what they go by.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah, Ronald Sawyer or Skip Sawyer, 1800 Phelps Fremont. It's my lot that we're talking about. And I'm not sure what a collector street is. It was never really brought up. And as far as the trees, if we put trees there, you'll never see the cars. So we're willing to put trees off to the side more, and it'd be a hedge along there. Would if you've ever seen any of my other properties, we try and make things look nice. So the plan, there wasn't one brought to the planning commission. It's my fault. I didn't realize what all I should do. So went ahead and had a set of plans drawn up and by Indris and to give an idea of what we would do there. So if that explains that, so. Any questions?
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. Very appreciative of the businesses that are run by Mr. Sawyer in this town. They've always had outstanding appearance and outstanding service. So my issues are kind of tangential really to the issues that were raised by Mr. Ray. They're really procedural matters as to whether or not this council chooses to follow procedural matters and holds the staff to following the things that are in the municipal code. So for purposes of clarity, There are definitions in the UDC for arterials and collectors. The main thing is that they have to collect something in order to be classified that. And I think my review is the same as Mr. Ray's. State does not classify Jackson Street meeting those standards. That in of itself presents a bit of a problem that hasn't been tackled here and resolved, because 11502, which is the section that deals with auto sales and service establishments permitted as a conditional use, have some requirements. And they're not being waived here. And we've addressed landscape and buffer yard, those kinds of things. But item 2 of that paragraph, or that section, says access to the site is from a collector or arterial roadway. That hasn't happened. It can't happen unless you were to move the entrance onto US 77 off of Jackson. That would mean you'd have to change your landscape design once more in order to meet UDC standards. And so when we make statements in the resolution that we're following the municipal code and the UDC, I think that's an overstatement, because we are not effectively dealing with this. We didn't deal with it at the Planning Commission. They didn't waiver it. They didn't suggest a waiver. The council's not addressing it uniquely tonight as a part of this. It sounds like perhaps the applicant wasn't even made aware of it. And in addition to that, it goes on in item 4 that says, and I don't know whether this has been attended to or not, but all outside display areas have to be improved with all weather services in accordance with subsection 11804.06. I don't see anything in the staff report or in the resolution that indicates that that's occurring, other than by reference. And then also in subsection 7D, it goes on to say, as a requirement for a permit, existing buildings shall not be occupied or reused for vehicle sales, rental, service, unless all parking, loading, access, landscape, buffering, screening, signage, and exterior lighting is brought into compliance with Article 8 of site development. I see nothing in the staff report that would indicate that this has been satisfied, and the council should be apprised that all those standards have been met with regards to the UDC. So again, this is a procedural issue. I just don't think, from my perspective, from what I see in the packet material offered to you as council members, that you have the requisite information to pass this tonight. Not opposed to your passing it, but I think you need to deal with the access issue. And you need to specifically know whether these other subsections in 11502 have been complied with. They are your rules of operation, and they ought to be adhered to. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments from council. Councilman Von Baeren.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify. It's not clear to me. I understand the collector arterial terminology. Is it critical that, and maybe this is a question for Jennifer, is it critical that traffic access this from a collector? What is the reason for stating that specifically?
You see that just about every item in special permits in the current UDC. It's something that we will be changing in the future. The intent of that really, especially for something like auto sales, you think about this particular area of South Fremont. There's no access available in this area off of Broad Street to this particular lot.
Yeah.
It is immediately available, just not even 100 feet off of Jackson. The primary way to get to the lot is going to be off of Broad Street, not off of Jackson. So in my mind, that satisfies that requirement. The question about Planning Commission granting waivers, if you look at section 11-812D, which refers to landscaping, it says that necessary or requested adjustments or changes to the requirements of 11-810 landscaping, buffering, and screening may be made of, there's a list of reasons, and it says number 2, in these instances, the Planning Commission may consider authorizing a special exception if the standards of approval may not be met, and by considering approval with conditions or denial of the site plan as set out. So that's how the Planning Commission was able to grant the waiver of the landscaping, which was for a reduced amount. and specifically the amount of trees and shrubs that are shown on the landscape plan in front of you meet the requirements that were talked about at the planning commission meeting. There are trees along in a type A buffer yard along West Jackson and a buffer yard that is providing trees and shrubs along Broad Street.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ellis.
I'm bringing up the gravel just because I want, it's just a small issue, but, and I've heard from other business owners that in the past, Fremont has made business owners upgrade gravel parking lots to cement parking lots. Do we do that anymore? I mean, this was 5 or 10 years ago where I had several business owners come to me and say, the city's making me upgrade is that something we do? And
In certain circumstances, yes, but gravel parking lots, if you look into definition, are considered a form of hard surfacing.
is that in the past UDC or is the new one?
It's in our current
Current one? Okay. Good to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from the city council? Councilwoman Lathrop.
I was not seated as a planning commissioner at that meeting. However, I did attend the meeting and it was thoroughly discussed as far as the landscape plan that it was needed before it went in front of the city council. And it's all in our packet. And I think they did a nice job with presenting what plants and where they're going to be. And I don't think it would be here without that approval.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Okay. Councilman Jensen.
With no other comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-101, 010, excuse me.
Councilman Sukram.
I'm going to second that.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by staff, council, or the public? Councilman Von Baron.
I just have one question on item 15.
Okay. Staff.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. I'd like to remove item 24. I have the new template that the council received today, but I have it in copy form here.
Okay, thank you. The public.
Right here to 2318 East Fifth. If I could ask a couple questions on item 22, please.
Okay.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street. I just had a very minor question and concern on number 17.
Okay. Okay, I would, Councilman Von Baron, you're still on. Is there any other additional? Oh, my fault. Thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda items 11 through 14, 16, 18 through 21, and 23. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 15 is resolution 2023-012, approving the use of Masonic Park, August 11th through 13th, 2023 by Fremont Dairy Queen to hold Dairy Queen Days. So is there a staff? Go ahead, Jody.
Sure. Jody Sanders, City Administrator. Nick Hansen, Director of Parks and Recreation, is at a training this evening. This is a request by Dairy Queen to basically host a festival in Masonic Park. and it's the use of Masonic Park that's being asked for the council to consider. We also have Connie from the Park and Rec Board as well. She attended the meeting because this was considered by the Park and Rec Board in January, but they didn't have a quorum to vote on it on this.
Initial questions for staff on this, Councilman Von Baron.
My only question is parking, since it's not exactly a high density area for parking spaces and it's bordered by 23rd Street. Is there just an academic question is what's the provision for parking, or is there any, or is it as you can find it?
That was discussed at the meeting. It was recommended that the manager of the Dairy Queen or owner of the Dairy Queen consider visiting with the Masonic home to find if there was additional parking across the street. There is a crosswalk across 23rd Street. Otherwise, it would be street parking up and down Park Avenue most generally.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Any comments from the public on this?
Charlie Pleskatch, 1673 County Road 23, Mount Moore, Nebraska. I'm the owner of the Dairy Queen here in town. Regarding the parking, I've already been in contact with a couple of the businesses along 22nd Street that they're willing to help with parking on that. Otherwise, pending approval, working with the other local businesses to arrange as much off-street as we can. There will be quite a bit of on-street parking during the event. A lot of the event will be short-term, come and go. There will be, some events that will be longer term. So if there's any other questions, I'll be available.
Are there any questions for the applicant on this while he's here? Okay. Okay. All right. Any additional comments from council on this? Councilman Ellis?
Just a question for a city administrator. I've never seen this before. It said financial impact for personal hours to equipment hours. Do we charge for that? Or is that just?
There's not an intent to charge on this particular event. It's not a great deal different than other organizations that request help with the park. John C. Fremont Days is a prime example. They do make a payment to the city for some of the services, but what they pay doesn't offset much beyond the police presence that they have for the downtown beer garden. So these are just things that would normally happen with anybody that was having an event in a park.
So are they making a payment to the city for something else, you said?
No, this particular group is not.
Okay.
No, I'm saying John C. Fremont Days does. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments from the council on this item? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-012.
Councilman Dinkins.
I would second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 17 is resolution 2023-014, authorizing the City Fremont Fire Department to purchase a Braun ambulance from Braun Industries through Sourcewell to replace the fire department's 2008 marquee ambulance. Go ahead, Chief Burnt.
Todd Burnt, Fire Chief. What you see in front of you is to purchase a new ambulance. It is in the capital plan, but no money has really been allocated for it until we start the budget process till this next year. But due to lead times, we really need to get this order now, so we get it in. Right now, they're looking at March of 2025 before we even receive it. The last ambulance that we ordered back in 2018-19, lead time was only 8-9 months at that time. Now we're up to 26 months. So the more we hold off on this, the longer lead times are possibly going to be getting. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Burnt? Councilman Jensen.
Just so I'm understanding this correctly, this would be an expenditure that would be coming out of a future budget then?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. We all knew that the ambulance needed to be replaced. It's 14 years old. It gets a lot of wear and tear. My concern is we have not budgeted for this, even though you're going to approve it as a seated council now, knowing of the lead times, et cetera. And that in the future, when you make capital improve plans, like a 1 and 6 year type plan for the roads, perhaps maybe you can consider this for future projects. This is something that was talked about when the last new ambulance was purchased. And kudos to the chief for being proactive and putting the loader and the striker auto load cot, as well as the stair chair, onto the budget with this. I don't believe it has to be defined separately, but that's a question for legal. It states in there that you're purchasing an ambulance. It doesn't state the additional equipment with the exception of what's in the staff report itself. However, on the capital improvement plans, when you sit down as the governing body now, as you're seated, look forward to the future and talk to the departments about what they see coming down the pike in the future so you can have some tentative budgetary discussions. This is something that's going to take a big bite out of the department. But again, kudos to the chief for being proactive and applying for that $150,000 grant that they may or may not get. And the next albatross hanging around our neck is we need more manpower to man it. And we have to do something more proactive to fill those 6 vacant seats and fill seats that we lose through retirements or people vacating newly hired. I think we had one that was here 3 or 4 days and it left to go to Kansas. So on that bandwagon, take a look at your capital improvement plans for future. And thank you for considering the unit tonight.
Okay. All right. Any additional comments from council on this? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem. Councilman Sukram. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 22 is resolution 2023-018 approving the request of John C. Fremont Committee to allow vendors to stay overnight in vendors encampment of John C. Fremont Park. So I'll have staff report on this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jody Sanders, City Administrator for Nick Hansen. Nick was approached by the John C. Fremont Days Board President, Barry Rieger, who is here this evening, to request the use of John C. Fremont Park for vendors to spend the night. Typically, our ordinances, well, I shouldn't say typically, our ordinances state that there shall be no one in the park between 11 and 6 overnight. But the vendors we're talking about, primarily the vendors that are in kind of like tents on the northwest corner of the park. Those vendors, we've had a number of those tell us that they just don't feel comfortable leaving their wares, in the tent. They don't want to have to, there's no way to secure a tent, and they don't want to have to take everything with them and then bring it back the next day for setup for 3 days. And so the board had come forward and asked Nick to consider allowing them to stay overnight in the park. This also was considered at the January Park and Rec Board. Although they did not have a quorum, the consensus of the group that was in attendance was that this seemed like a reasonable request.
Okay. Questions for staff? Okay. Comments from the public?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth. I asked that this be removed just to raise a question with regards to some conversation had at the last John C. Fremont days with vendors that were located not in the John C. Fremont Park area, but rather that were in the Clemens Park area where we actually have the displays that were moved out of John C. Fremont Park and moved to Clemens. And so they had asked, and I'm surprised that if we're going to open up vendor overnight capability, we're not doing the same thing for these folks that are located in a different park location. Not sure whether or not those that are asking for this that are here tonight or the Parks Committee had given thought to those events that are going on in Clemens Park. But I know from visiting with those people, they probably would be just as appreciative of those people that are in the John C. Fremont Park to be able to be present overnight to protect their investments as well. So as you think about this, I don't know whether the resolution could be modified to be more encompassing. Certainly the John C. Fremont Day procedures and guidelines that are out on their website for John C. Fremont Days could encapsulate all of this with regards to the application forms that are listed there for both John C. Fremont Park and other parks. So it could be opened up to be more broadly allowed in other parks during John C. Fremont Days. And I encourage you to think about that with regards to vendors that are not located in the John C. Fremont Park. Thanks.
Barry Reeker, 1040 Locust Street, North Bend, president of John C. Fremont Days. Currently, they do spend the night in the Clemens Park. And that was passed many years ago. It's been going on for ever since they moved out there. All we're requesting is that our vendors that currently stay or actually have booths in the city park are allowed to stay there, provide security for their wares, as well as anything else that may take place in the park during those hours. They wouldn't have any additional tents. They wouldn't have any additional campers or anything else other than in their booth. And it would save them a lot of time moving stuff back and forth and wear and tear on the lawn of the park as well. So anybody else has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for the applicant on this item? Okay, any other comments from the public?
Connie Geese, 2076 East Second Street. I'm the vice chairman for the Parks Board. We discussed this at length at the meeting on January 9th, but we didn't have enough people there for the quorum. There are also children that stay in the park in John C. Fremont Parks. It's Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts stay in it's called guarding the tent, in the Chautauqua tent. Scout leaders stay in there with them. That's also been a thing I don't know if that's ever been approved by the city council, but as a mother and a former Girl Scout leader, I spent many John C. Fremont weekends in the Chautauqua tent with the kids there. If we could have vendors there, that would actually be a little bit more reassuring for some of the moms and leaders that are staying there with the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. They said we estimated that about 25 to 30% of the vendors would like to stay over there at night. A lot of them will pack up their stuff and take it with them. They stay in hotels. They bring in a lot of money to John C. Fremont, into Fremont during John C. Fremont Days. And I wish we had a quorum that evening to vote for this and for the Dairy Queen Days, but we did not. So if anybody has any questions about our meeting that night, let me know.
Okay, any other comments from the public on this? Okay, all right, additional comments from council. Councilman Von Baron.
If there are none, I would move to approve resolution 2023-018.
Okay. Councilman Jensen.
I will second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay.
All right, moving on to item 24 is a move to approve the template for a 50-year land lease agreement for the 1306 North Ridge Road with the United States of America. Go ahead.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. I'd like to enter into the record an updated copy of the draft from the Corps of Engineers.
Okay, Councilman Jensen.
Motion to receive.
Okay, Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes to receive the document.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
This request was fairly unique in that you're not being asked to approve the lease tonight and have the mayor sign this lease. As you can see, there are a few blanks there. The old lease was signed in 1973 and expires at the end of June, I believe. So this would start July 1st of 2023. The lease is for 50 years and for $1. In visiting with the Corps, who is handling the real estate matters for the Army Reserve, they indicated that if I felt very strongly that we needed to negotiate a higher price, we would, one, need to get an appraisal of the property, and two, most likely I'd need to speak to the department or the Secretary of Defense, because it goes up that high on the food chain. So their lease is very boilerplate, very standard. Travis has reviewed this. We wanted to have some comment in here about how they will leave the property. At the end of the lease, that was a concern that we had, some kind, and that we typically in most of our leases have an out clause. And the Corps said, we don't want to invest additional amounts into an installation that we may not be able to say with great assurity that we'll have for the next 50 years. And so basically the lease is dependent on this. The lease references having Exhibit A attached, which would be the legal description, and the outline of the map was included with your agenda packet, showing what their intention is to expand their footprint. I did share that information with the staff, received comments back, and forward those on to the Corps of Engineers, and they felt comfortable that they could respond to that. So tonight we're just asking for council approval of this template. You will get the actual lease once we have the legal description and all of those things taken care of. I'll take any questions.
Councilman Vaughn.
I couldn't quite tell from the drawings. When you turn into that, the lot or the lane for the dog park, will there still be enough room for parking on the other side of that road?
So, and I failed to mention that it was also discussed at the Park and Rec Board meeting in January. And the idea was that the dog park was felt that it was ample enough space that they could cut it back a little bit, move the fence on the dog park, the west fence, to move it just a little bit more east to allow for angle parking along that drive. You would likely, rather than back out, you'd need to, pull out and then go forward to the end. There's a place that you can turn around and come back out. The idea would be that there would still be a 2-lane road there.
Any other questions for staff on this item? Okay. Okay, I would take a motion to approve the template here. Councilman Vaughn.
Motion to approve.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second the motion.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to new business is resolution 2023-019 affirming emergency declaration for repairs to rail support structural steel on the Lawn Wright power plant fuel handling receiving equipment. Staff report from Jeff Shanahan.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. We had contractors out working on a project that was approved quite a while back, the rail expansion and the unloading equipment in the coal pit. When they were doing those installations of the hoppers, the beams that we're talking about here became exposed, and we were able to realize that they had some damage to them. So we contacted HDR, our engineering of record on this project. They sent out their structural folks and determined the beams were not suitable to carry the weight of a train engine or any of the train cars. So basically those beams have been pretty much condemned. About the only way we get a train on there is with some shoring equipment. So what we're doing now is we're asking for you to affirm an emergency declaration so that we can proceed with this project. It's likely going to exceed our spending limit of the 120,000. And we want to get the project moving. So we're looking at bidding out for price and delivery time. So we're going to be moving forward on that if we get approval tonight. Without this, we cannot receive trains, like I said.
Okay. Questions? Thank you. Comments from the public on this item? Okay, seeing none, additional comments from council. If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Von Baeren.
I would so move.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Okay, cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 26 is ordinance 5636, repealing and replacing ordinance number 5503, amending rates, minimum charges and surcharges for the use of the municipal sanitary system.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. We did some planned improvements out at the wastewater treatment plant. It was approved to do the engineering and then the construction phases. And then just earlier this year, we approved the ordinance to get bonds to cover the cost of it. We got the bonds purchased and got the interest rates established. So at that time, we submitted all that information to our rate consultant and asked him to look at that and see how our rates would do. He recommended that we had done a rate increase in 2019 when the last modification was done. At that time, they looked at all the classifications and they weighted them for users and that. And so we left those alone. And we looked at just taking what it's going to cost to pay the bonds back. And we just applied that to all the already established ratios. Holstone had paid us $10 million up front to cover the cost. And they also are providing up to $1.75 million for the engineering on the project. So this has an effect for the average customer of about $2.20 for the first year, and then another $2.40 or something for the second year of this rate increase.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Shanahan? Okay. Okay. Comments from the public on this item?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street, Fremont. Raising the rates again has an impact. It may not impact the majority of us that are still employed, but in those that are in a lower economic situation and have very fixed incomes, and it doesn't sound like much right now, $2.20 per month per resident, not inclusive of the industrial, not inclusive of the other businesses, et cetera. Not talking about Holstone, Costco, Fremont Beef, just the residential. You have over 10,500 ratepayers. You will raise in a matter of 12 months over $270,000. Going to prorate that for 9 months. You're going to raise in excess of $200,000. Just third of the year will be gone. You're going to be approving this, and how ironic it'll start on April 1st. The following year, you're going to raise it another $2.42. You're going to raise over $300,000 just off residential. The increase and the new digester and waste lagoons, et cetera, were not mandated because of residential use. They're mandated because of commercial and industrial. Why is the residential customer helping to bear the burden on this? Doesn't seem like a lot of money to you when you collectively add it up. It's $2.20 for the last 9 months of this year. Next year, it's going to jump another $2.42, $4.62. Doing your math, 10,500 minimum for residential rate users. Probably closer to 11,000. Again, why is the residential customer being asked to fit the bill for all the improvements? Granted, you're going to address the increases on industrial, and I get that, but I don't think this is the responsibility of the residential ratepayer. The improvements, the renovations, the addition of the lagoons, the amount of lagoons we had to have, and the issues we've had with them, as well as the heater breaking down and the emergency declaration, all that coupled, that's not due to the residential. Please don't pass this automatically with the residential increase. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the public on this item? Okay, comments from council. Councilman Von Baeren.
Just wondered if Jeff could address those comments that were just made.
Yeah, the Holstone has paid in, 10 million bucks for the portion of the lagoons and part of the improvements on the plant. It makes sense to improve the plant to get more of it out of there, because if we add a little bit more money or we add more money to it, you don't want to build like a half of a basin. So we don't build it just to fit for Holstone. We build it for future growth. So we have about 30% extra capacity available in the plant right now. And when it gets completed, that will be able to be utilized for future developments for housing and that kind of thing. And then we added a thing in the ordinance, or a section in the ordinance, that talks about capital contributions for significant users. So if a significant user comes along, like what Holstone does, we're going to look at how much they impact the existing treatment plant, and then we'll assess them that amount of money for the improvements. If we don't have the growth that we're anticipating for housing and all the residential improvements, we may or may not implement it. We may use some of our 30% to cover that, but we're going to get the money up front to cover those costs of anybody that uses that's a significant user.
I know this is not as simple as my question, but
Yep.
I'm just trying to understand the balance of industrial versus residential. We are not increasing industrial rates.
Oh, no, we are increasing industrial rates. Every rate in the ordinance, we've already, in 2019, they went ahead and they split out the customer charge. They adjusted that for the residential and the industrial and the commercial and all those. So we left all those already where they're at. We just took every rate that's in our ordinance, whether it's residential, other municipalities, industrial, the ones that go into the forest main that goes into the lagoons, every rate went up 10%. So industrial is going up 10% also.
Okay.
Every classification, whether it's the customer fee or whether it's the loadings or whether it's the flows, they're all going up 10%.
Thank you.
Yep. The other thing we did add was the municipal. We put that back in there for the other municipalities, the Valley and the Arlington.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, maybe Jeff, if you can refresh my memory. It seems to me, I remember when all this started coming up about having to expand on our wastewater system. This is before Holstone, before Lincoln Premium. The federal regulations were changing to where a lot of the changes we have to make to our wastewater treatment were going to have to be made anyway. Not that we're not going much bigger because of the other projects, but there was like lagoons. I know the ammonia was changing dramatically to where we weren't going to be able to stick with status quo. We were going to have to upgrade.
Right. And we did that, and we put that in the 19 process, and now we're upgrading again. And as we develop more and more, we got to have more growth, and treatment plants are a very expensive process to build, and they're very expensive to maintain.
Additional questions? Okay. Any other comments from council on this? If there are none, I would take a motion. This would be to hold first reading. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 5636, repealing and replacing ordinance number 5503, first reading.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay. Now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending rates, minimum charges, and surcharges for the use of the municipal sanitary system, repealing ordinance number 5503 and all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when the rates and customer charges and surcharges are effective, and providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Okay, we'll move on to item 27, which is the Keene Memorial Library Annual Report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. Laura England Biggs, Library Director, Keene Memorial Library. I have 4 pages here, very big font, but I will try to rush through it a little faster than that because it is getting late. As you can see from the infographic on the cover of our draft report, there are a lot of highlights to share. It was a good year for the library. We circulated over 156,000 items. Almost 63,000 or 40% of those items were digital, meaning ebooks, e-magazines, audiobooks, and downloadable music. That's up from 15% in 2018-19. Those percentages have been rising over the years because of the increase in devices and accessibility on those devices through apps such as Kindle and Freegal. Our programming is on its way back up to our pre-COVID or 2018-19 numbers. You can see when you compare the numbers on page 4 of the report, you can look at 2018-19 and 21-22 has really rebounded. We did almost as many programs and a lot more people came. I believe it was 18,794 people this year. While there has been a significant reduction in the hardwire internet computer use, Wi-Fi use is up significantly again. That proliferation of devices that folks bring with them to the library, I think is what contributes to that factor. They're not having to use our computers. They can use their own and log on and do their work and do their printing without the intervention of the hardwired computers. Our website visits have jumped significantly as well to over 122,000 per year, up from, I think 2018-19 was around, 4,500. I wanted to say 5,000, but I knew that was high. I think that shows that the library's website is a useful resource for the community. You can see a lot of numbers surrounding the move to the auditorium in the infographic. I'll let you know it takes over 2,200 boxes to pack books and shelves and offices. And it takes about 18 days to do all of that, plus a little extra time behind the scenes with office work. It takes 3.5 days for the professional movers to take everything where it's supposed to go, whether it's from the library to the auditorium or the library to the storage units. It takes a really dedicated staff. I work with some of the most outstanding people, and we work with some of the most outstanding fellow employees of the city and the Department of Utilities. We could not have made this move without the help of multiple departments across both the city and the DU, especially IT, Parks and Recreation, the warehouse, and the street department. We had a lot of work to do once the building was empty to get all the extra shelving out, and those guys came in and buckled down, and I can't thank them enough. You'll see that we've been tracking numbers across the past 4 fiscal years. We got to wondering what pre-COVID versus now looks like. Overall, things are positive. Our circulation is up 23%. Downloads are up 235%. And even our average daily checkout is up 63%. With total programming down, the attendance is still up. Meetings that we held are down because, well, we closed the meeting rooms so we'd have someplace to put the stuff we packed. But there were still 100 and some meetings throughout the year. And we look forward to welcoming even more folks when we reopen the library soon, by the end of the year, is what I mean by soon, not. We're still just working on the steel right now. We've got staff dedicated to doing outreach since we can't bring as many people in. They've had a 217% increase in those offsite contacts. There is a typo that I need to point out in the financials on page 5. The first line reads property tax support Keno, and it should simply read property tax support. Somehow Keno got run over into that first line and should have been on the second line. The $1.3 million is not Keno funding. That's the property tax support. The library received no Keno funding during this fiscal year. And I appreciate Kristen Klingsick taking a look at that and catching that for me so that I didn't have egg on my face before you this evening. It's been an exciting year. We had a groundbreaking ceremony September 27th. The steel began to rise out of the footings a week and a day ago, and tomorrow we raise one of the final beams into place in the afternoon. So thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for our library director?
Yes.
Councilman Von Baron?
Just a question on the financial report. It says unaudited, so I assume that these will be audited.
The audit is going on right now, I believe, or is almost getting in that process.
It'd be included with the city's overall financial statements.
Yes. Just the timing on this report, it has to be in before the second Monday in February, which means I have to get it in before the audit process finishes. So that's why we note it that way.
So the audit will be in the city numbers.
Correct.
Okay.
And in the past, we've had very few discrepancies.
Councilman Jensen?
Is it too late to sign the beam?
No, you have until 12:30 tomorrow. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we need a motion on this item? Legal, or I would say we need a motion to receive the report. Okay. Councilman Sukram?
I'll make the. Do we have public comment?
We'll take public. Is there any public comment on this item?
Yes. Spent a lot of time researching this thing we've been talking about tonight, but I was only able to find, and I would like to see a budget and a breakdown for the library. And I was only able to find one from 2020. I would think that would be published in public information. There was a pie graph, there was a chart indicating the resources for the fund and sort of a breakdown of how this budget was spent. That's a lot of money, and I, as a taxpayer, would like to see how it's being spent. So that's one thing. The next thing, I go on and I try to find the card catalog to examine and see whether books that I am interested in are there. It is like going through a maze of, I won't say it, holes to try to find the card catalog. You can hit the card catalog entry, and then you get something else. And you wander around until luckily you find the card catalog. I think there could be great improvements made in the library's presence on the internet for users. Now, I'm not here advocating doing away with books. I am advocating the manner in which the subject matter is presented. Yes, there should be books on sex education. But the manner in which people are presenting them is deceiving. It is loaded with propaganda. And if you don't understand propaganda devices, I would be happy to conduct a session for you. Because this is presented so subtly, so smoothly, and there's an underlying message which you are not getting. And I'd be happy to explain that too, though not right now.
Are there any other comments from the public on this item? Okay, we'll go back to the motion to receive the report. Did we have Councilman Sukram?
Yeah, I made the motion.
Okay, all right, Councilwoman Ganem,
Second motion.
cast your votes to receive the report.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 28 is a resolution 2023-01021 approving the 2023 Federal Aviation Administration Airport Capital Improvement Plan for Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. This time we'll have staff report.
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, Public Works. What's before you tonight is our annual airport capital improvement plan that we submit to the FAA. Basically, much like our 1 and 6 year plan for the road lays out projects and kind of the order and steps that we want to get them done. The FAA can then use this to kind of look forward to future grant ups that they may be through the discretionary funds could come our way. The current project that we're working on design right now is for replacement of a section of the main runway. And in order for us to be eligible for that grant, we have to complete this annual CIP. We're rushing it through. I think I would have had this better. This is the third time I've said this today. The UIB and Planning Commission have both recommended approval of this. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff on this item? Councilman Jensen?
Yeah, just for clarity, I'm going to ask the question. This doesn't commit funds to anything. We have to have this in place in order for us to get any matching federal funds for any projects that may be coming down the road. Is that not correct?
That is correct. It doesn't commit us, nor does it commit the FAA to spend any dollars on these.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, comments from the public on this item? Okay, any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram?
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2023-021.
Councilman Jensen?
I will second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 29 is a resolution 2023-022 accepting and awarding bid to M.E. Collins Contracting Company LLC for Bell Street Viaduct Rehabilitation Project.
Justin Zetterman, Public Works. What's before you now is the construction contract for the rehabilitation of Bell Street, the viaduct. It is needing quite a bit of work, and over time it has started to slide and coming off of the supports at the south end of the bridge. Not going to fail tomorrow. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, who knows? It might, and it needs to get taken care of now before we can slide any further. Along with that, we're going to have the opportunity to resurface the deck, upgrade some fences, upgrade guardrails, just make some other improvements with it at the same time. As you can see, the last year's budget was at $1.5 million for it. And it did come in considerably higher than that. One factor in that, that wasn't in the staff report, was that after that number had been budgeted, a decision was made to put down an asphalt membrane across the deck of the bridge, which will help seal it up. There are some voids, fill in things, and just help to keep it lasting longer and a better surface to drive on. And cost of construction has gone up quite a bit. We've got Chris Lane is an engineer with Speece Lewis who did the design work. They are currently in conversations with Emmy Collins to look at some alternative methods that maybe we can use to jack up the bridge and lift it off the existing abutments that maybe would save a fairly considerable amount of money if we can find that alternative. So we are working and we'll continue to work to try and bring this number down. But this is going to be a long process, and the bridge will be closed through the whole thing. And the sooner we can get them out there, the sooner we can get the bridge reopened. And so we bring it to you, and certainly be happy to answer any questions you might have. Oh, I apologize. One other thing I was asked to mention was we have not initiated yet, but in the coming weeks, now that we have a contractor, our intent is to start meeting with structural components, meeting with the grain elevators, help them understand when and what we'll be doing, help me better understand their access routes that they currently use so that we can come up with an effective method to try and move vehicles around while this is closed.
Thank you. Councilman Sukram.
Yeah, do you have any idea when you could come back with maybe some lower costs on this deal? I mean, it's way over. I mean, way over.
We could try to rebid it. Very rarely does that end up with more money. We could try and do it next year. Maybe there'd be more contractors available, and inflation may go up another 10%. It's not likely to cost any less later than it is now.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff on this? Councilman Ellis?
When is it going to be closed and for how long
We don't have an official start date. Early spring is what they put on their form. And it's probably going to be at least 6 months. So into late fall, most likely. So
have we solved the problem with the trains blocking the other way to get across the tracks?
Blocking Luther?
Yeah.
To my knowledge, no, we haven't.
No, we
solved
got
that.
Luther blocked and we're going to have Bell Street down.
Yeah, no, this is going to be hard.
Okay.
But it's something that needs
So
to
we got
be
to
done.
do it. Yeah. We
Yeah.
don't want the bridge coming down. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public on this?
Denise Kai, 2550 Deerfield Avenue. Yes, our main concern will be for the fact that it's talk and in print 6 months. That's weather permitting, of course, it's an outdoor job. Yes, we have been the ones to watch and see that Luther Road's been closed, and there over Christmas, it was 1 week closed with a train. That can't happen. 6 months of Bell Street being closed, Luther Road being blocked for even 3 hours. It's wrong. And if Johnson Road is blocked also with a train, that it's that long. Our access to emergency vehicles, not just residents, but businesses, anything, it's going to be all the way around. And then if they go around Broad Street to Cloverly, who says there's not going to be a train there. So our main concern is, and I can understand, yeah, it's a big job, but something's got to be shown even to our fire department to even have the knowledge to know that this is going to be what it'll be. And the other thing, talking about bringing the price down, they were in such a big hurry to put in Luther Road South And some money there could have been saved and put towards this Bell Street Viaduct that they've known that it's been shifting and having problems. So here we are again with our budgets and where we should put the money, and our streets are a mess. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I don't live right in this area, but this used to be my ward. I would raise this for your consideration and concern with regards to putting out a alternate route map that will be usable. I guess sitting here listening to this evening, I can only imagine that the alternate traffic route is going to be Morningside Road for a lot of what traffic is necessarily for rerouting. We've had numerous complaints during my tenure on council as to the heavy truck traffic that's on that route, the jake braking that goes on that route, the speeding that goes on that route. And if you're going to put extra traffic and heavy truck traffic on that route, I ask you to do your due diligence and caution with regards to how do you prepare for that so that the residents in that area aren't, and businesses too, for that matter, aren't jeopardized with regards to their access when we're putting more traffic on there. So I would encourage you to get that report for the public as soon as possible.
Chris Lane, Speece Lewis Engineers, engineer of record for the project. I understand your concern with the cost. We've been chasing that for the last year and a half, trying on not just this project, all projects. Estimates are hard to come by with the inflation, and concrete prices are astronomical right now. But all we're getting record of currently, or notice of, is from concrete prices that the suppliers are just, they're telling the contractors already that 2 months from now, add another 5%. That it's a continuous increase in pricing. In my years of rebidding projects, they've always come in higher unless we reduce substantially the scope of the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have on any of the aspects of it. So,
any questions for the engineer? Thank you. Appreciate your work. Any other comments from the public? Okay. Additional comments from council on this item. Councilman Sukram.
Yeah, Justin, did you guys, someone spoke about alternative routes. Are you guys going to put something out well before that to set up detours and?
Yeah, we'll be formulating that. Like I said, especially with structural components, because they're actually going underneath the bridge. We have to coordinate with them to make sure that we're not working in the same place. But yes, we'll put something together with our webpage updates that we're doing. We can probably pretty easily create a page just for this project, have a map on it and show those routes so that it is clear.
Is that going to be brought back to council just for us to look at least to know a report, maybe even?
I can certainly bring it back to you in that, but
if that'd be all right.
Yeah, we'll talk about our traffic committee meeting as well. So
okay,
if anything, it would be on those minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I guess just the same basic questions. I would assume police and fire. I mean, I think it would be second nature for them to plan around this, but they do have a formal plan for accessing?
Yeah, we'll make sure that everybody's fully aware when it's going to happen.
Okay.
And they'll have plenty of time to make whatever adjustments they need to make.
And I'm not familiar with the Morningside Road, but given the concerns expressed, I could see where that could become a real nightmare with that much. If that is the primary route for diverted traffic, is there anything that can be done to moderate what's already seems to be at least a difficulty, if not a problem?
We can look at either having enforcement go out there to check and see, or put up a speed study, see if there's something that needs to be done there. I don't know if we've done one to date. I've certainly have heard people say before that the trucks speed down Morningside Road. And so we'll do what we can to encourage that, but we'll need help from everybody who's out there.
Yeah, I'm not trying to second guess you, but if the problem is that we know it's going to get worse and additional enforcement might be a wise option.
Yeah, it may be necessary if it comes to that, and that's.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments from council, questions or comments? Councilman Jensen.
I'll just make a comment. I don't know where the rest of council is on this. I mean, you've already said this isn't going to break tomorrow. The costs are way high. Everybody's got contractors out doing things and cement is hard to get. Is this something that can wait?
We can push it back a year, but it would have cost less to do it last year than it would to do it this year. And to expect that the supply chain issues with cement is going to change, or that the volume amount of work out there where we're having trouble getting enough concrete to sites is going to change. I don't think that's likely to happen. So I think costs will just keep going up.
I think for us going through this process and just going through this discussion is realizing how important our infrastructure and our viaduct in the south of town there is important to Fremont. And, I think we have to take care of our infrastructure. I mean, it's not going to get any cheaper. Now, this is a very important roadway and section of roadway for Fremont. We obviously have, as our, engineer said and public works director, there's issues going on. So I think we got to just bite the bullet and get it done. Councilwoman Ganem.
It's kind of like we're between a rock and a hard place because it really needs to be done and fixed and reported, not put off. Anytime any organization has put things off to this nature, it costs more. I mean, with being with the public schools, when they delayed things, it was almost double the next time they got to it. And so I'd hate to see us have to pay even more than what we're doing. It's just a hard bullet to swallow.
Any other comments from council? Councilman Sukram.
Well, if there's no other comments, I'll make a motion for resolution 2023-022.
Okay, Councilman Von Baron.
Second.
Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, and then item 30 is resolution 2023-013, authorizing GDS and Associates to develop the integrated resource plan for the city of Fremont Department of Utilities.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. We're required to submit an integrated resource plan to WAPA, Western Area Power Association, for every 5 years. What the integrated resource plan does is it looks at your loads projected out into the future and looks at your generation or your ability to supply that load. And it requires about a 12% margin. So we have done these internally in the past. I wanted to get a real fresh set of eyes on it. We developed a scope of work, sent it out to about 6 firms to do this evaluation for us. We received 2 bids back. The firms that didn't submit proposals said they didn't have any manpower to do it and they were all busy. So we're recommending that we go with GDS and Associates. The thing with them is they had just completed the one in Hastings, so they're familiar with the SPP footprint. They're familiar with Nebraska's public power and that sort of thing. So we feel comfortable with them doing the job. We have not done business with them in the past, but I called their references and talked to the folks at Hastings. They were happy with the study. So at this point, we're recommending that we go with them.
Okay. Questions from council? Any comments from the public on this item? Okay. Additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll put a motion on resolution 2023-013.
Councilman Jensen,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
I'd take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Jensen,
Motion to adjourn.
Councilman Sukram,
Second.
cast your votes to adjourn.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.